Hi everyone, my name is Jamie Smith. Welcome to NurseDeck. I will be your host today. I will be doing an interview on Mariah Edgington. Hi Mariah.
Hi Jamie, thank you.
Yeah, as a quick introduction, I'm the author of Geriatric Notes. I'm the Chief Educator and Compliance Officer, Premier Geriatric Solutions. So I'm happy to be here on NurseDeck and to interview you. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. I have been a registered nurse for 35 plus years, and I'm actually retired. I was at the bedside in critical care, emergency, ICU. At one point, I worked in the ER and decided I needed to know a little bit more about pre-medicine, and so I went and got my paramedic certification.
Wow.
So I had all the bells and whistles. I was a flight nurse for a time, and even have gone to the other spectrum where towards the end of my career, I wanted to give back a little bit. So I volunteered with holistic therapies of aromatherapy and many others with hospice patients. And I found that extremely rewarding too. So your geriatric background really speaks to me, Jamie. And I've done a variety of things. Now I'm currently caring for my mom as well as she enters the last chapter of her life.
Okay. Well, thank you for that introduction. You've done a little bit of everything. Wow. Thank you for that. How did you get started into nursing? Was it always your passion?
Oddly enough, it was initially a job at a nursing home. When I was 16, I went to work in the kitchen of a care center, and I just fell in love with the people. And I had so many of the residents in this care center say, "Oh, honey, you should be a nurse."
Oh.
And so I took their word for it and I ran with it, and it was a profession that I was made for. I was just real comfortable in that role for many years.
Well, it's very obvious from speaking with you that you're passionate. So tell our viewers, how did you become an integrative RN healthcare coach?
Well, that was a process of years, because initially when I started in nursing, I decided that I wanted to do the most critical care. I was kind of like an adrenaline junkie, as they say in the ER and ICUs, because I loved it and I thrived on that. But over the years of doing that, I found more connection with the patients and their families when I was more present. So the more present I became with them, the more I felt connected, and I felt the better care I could give. So the holistic component of it, over the years, I've become a Reiki practitioner, actually a Reiki Master. I deliver aromatherapy to people. I do guided meditation. And I've done a lot of these practices, mindfulness and breathing techniques, with not just the families and the patients, but with the nursing staff, with the hospital staff. And I found that it was a way I could help them to relax. And oddly enough, I would have frequently where I'd say to people, "Okay, so do you have time for a little bit of a meditation break?" I called them respites, because in 60 seconds we can do a respite for you. And people did not necessarily believe that. So as we got these little handheld devices, I would say, "Listen, I'll set my timer. How much time do you have?" "Oh, well, I don't have any time. I'm charting. I'm busy." And I'd say, "Well, could you give up a minute or two?" And they go, "Okay, 3 minutes max." And I'd say, "Well, I will watch the timer. I'm going to set it right now." And I would give them 3 minutes of aromatherapy and Reiki and guided meditation. And it would go that I'd watch that. When the timer went off, I'd say, "I respect your time, and our session is done." It was life-changing for a lot of nurses.
Wow. Yeah. 3 minutes? That's it?
Yeah. And it was interesting, because then they'd want more, but they didn't have time for more. They could give me 3 minutes of relaxation, and that changed their days.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I could use some of that.
It's
So
amazing.
So what are some things nurses can do to help with their self-care?
Well, that's another good point, because I used to teach people, the nurses and also the support staff, not just the nurses, but the people they work around all the time too. And once they learn these techniques, Jamie, they're able to do them themselves. They're able to teach them to their patients. And in that regard, once they start using them with their patients, they get a double dose because they're able to utilize that for their self-care, and then they give it back to the patient at the same time. And one way that we've found, and we all know this, is breathing techniques. You know, that simple breathing and breath work, bringing that focus back in, taking a breath, step back. We're real good at reacting. That we're trained to do that, right? At the bedside, somebody codes, you're right there. You got to do it. But there are situations where it isn't life and death, and you can take a step back, gather your thoughts, and then act instead of reacting. That helps decrease your stress level just with that. Add in taking a breath and relaxing into it. Now, one thing I did do that I would encourage the nurses who are hearing this to do is to take a little gauze pad and put perhaps some lavender essential oil on it. And if you're not allergic to it, then after you put that essential oil on that, tuck it up underneath your strap of your bra, or if you're a guy and don't have one, get it up there. And every once in a while, take a smell of that. Take a breath. Those two combined will decrease your stress level.
That's pretty incredible. So I'm going to buy me some lavender oil. And you're saying just every once in a while, just take a deep breath and it'll help?
Smell it. Yeah, it does. And it's just those two combinations, that olfactory and then that breath. And that kind of brings you back to a center. Now, if you really want to take it another level, you're going to also add a positive affirmation in there at the same time. I've got this. Because, Jamie, we know that whatever follows I am follows you. So when we say, oh, I can't believe or if we say, I am amazing, I give really good care, I am doing a great job, changes our mindset.
Just those few things.
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. What do you think about nursing community when it comes to having support? Do you think NurseDeck and their resources play a role in this?
I do. I absolutely do. When we reach out to a community, especially when you can get tips like the ones that you're getting right now from this short interview, and being able to know these are simple techniques, they change your life just by applying them. And NurseDeck is full of resources like this. I encourage everyone who's listening to this to reach out, dig in, and see what else is available on the platform.
You need to check out your LinkedIn profile too. I took a look before we came on here. You've got lots of followers. Yes. Do you think it is hard for nurses to have their own community?
Yes and no. There still is the theory that nurses eat their young, and we've all heard it.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's going away as we all become better educated about how we can support each other. And NurseDeck would play a part in that too, by helping build up nursing in that community, and to be able to say to people, this is what we find is real helpful, and here's some extra tips. So community does influence other nurses a lot.
I believe that for sure. Let's talk about leadership. What does being a nurse leader mean to you, and how do you view leadership in nursing?
Well, this would be a good tip and information for a young nurse, especially. And that is, I was unaware that as even a new grad, I was a leader. I don't know if you have considered that yourself. I mean, as you've gotten more and more into your roles, you've obviously owned that leadership role. But as a new nurse, did you consider that you were a leader?
No, actually I didn't. So I'm glad you brought that up. Makes me think about it.
It does. And if we can start instilling that in young people, they're already a leader. They need to own that and realize how many people are watching them. And once we develop that leadership skill within ourselves, that helps us support the people who are our managers, the people who are the CEOs, the people who are making the decisions. Because once we realize, oh my gosh, yes, I am a leader and I can say these things with authority. Yeah, this is what's happening here. And perhaps it might look better if we did it this way, or explain to me how your thinking is on this procedure or what we're doing here. And I think that will help decrease defensiveness in the profession and be able to help people to really become better leaders.
Thank you for that. That's very informative. Tell me, what do you say to the nurses who are leaving the field because of low pay, work environment, and poor leadership?
I would have to say that that's happening probably more now that we've gone through the pandemic or still going through the pandemic. Work conditions are tough.
Yes, they are. They are.
And when you have that kind of a pressure behind you, it makes it even more so because everybody has families or themselves that they're dealing with other issues that no one else knows about. So I would say, first and foremost, take care of yourself.
Yes.
Self-care is huge. And if you're at a point where you don't feel that you can even go on any further, number one, get some help from someone who is a professional. And then reach out to other people for support and communities like NurseDeck and others who can support you before you even exit. And that way you know you're making a good decision if you do decide to leave the profession. You're knowing that you've done your self-care, you've gotten help, you've used the resources, and then you can say, yes, I made the best decision for me at that time.
Thank you, Mariah. Do you feel nursing is changing for better or worse before and during COVID?
In and around COVID, everything changed. We have no doubt about that. Whether it's for worse or for better will remain to be seen in the future, and that depends on whether we take the lessons we've learned from this pandemic and apply them. If we can harness the power of the lessons we've learned, then it will change for the better.
Thank you for that. So, do you think nurses are forming stronger bonds with colleagues?
And Jamie, actually at this moment, I'm not able to speak to that specifically only because I am not behind those doors any longer.
Okay.
So I would have to say, from what I read and from the people I know still in the profession, still behind those closed doors, it sounds like there's a lot of difficult terrain to cover yet.
I agree. Okay. Do you think NurseDeck can help build on these bonds and connections by letting nurses connect all over and have the resources they need?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think NurseDeck is doing an amazing job and they're bringing their resources straight to the nurses who need it. If we can get NurseDeck, the community, into hands of people all across the world, because it's a global community. I'm in contact with nurses all over the world, and as they know that there is this resource and begin to utilize it to its fullest potential, it will grow.
Okay. Well, I have one more question for you. Due to COVID, do you think there will be a big wave of nurse turned entrepreneurs?
That is an interesting question, and that's because the virtuality that's happened because of COVID has changed so many doors and opened everything up. It's just people didn't realize the potential that was there. Looking at it in that regard, yeah, there will be, but there will still be the need for acute care nurses and bedside nurses and hospital nurses, no matter what happens virtually.
Well, thank you. The information was very good, and thank you for your time today on NurseDeck. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, I really appreciate everything you're doing, and I'm thrilled to hear about your geriatric ventures and what you're doing as well. I think that's great. So thank you very much for doing that.
Well, thank you. I look forward to hearing more and learning more about you and what you do, and buying some lavender oil to help with my stress. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Bye.